I mentioned Jeremiah 17:9 quite frequently. It's a unpleasant verse, but it is also a priceless verse in that it helps keep us anchored in the Word. Jeremiah 17:9 reads, "The heart is more deceitful than all else and is desperately sick. Who can understand it?" The paradox here is most of us cannot count all the sins we've committed. We've forgotten most of them, those of us who are further down the road. And that's the way people are. They've just done things more wrong than they can remember. And yet, when they look at this verse, many of them will push back against them. Here's the paradox. On one hand, they'll say, oh, yeah, man, I've got myself in more trouble than I can remember. But that verse isn't true about me. No, that verse is true about me, and it's true about everyone else also. If we trust in our own heart, as Solomon would say, we're a fool. But if we walk wisely, and the necessary inference of that, of walking wisely, is walking by the Word of God rather than our own heart, then we're going to have some good progress and enjoy some good things along the way. So we're going to let the Word be the lamp unto our feet, the light into our path. That is the best thing to do. And when we do stumble, because we will stumble, because James 3:2 says we all stumble in many things, then we run back to Scripture to 1 John 1:9. He says if we confess our trespass, He's faithful and just to forgive us, because He wants us to win. He wants us to be on the right path. And when we get off of the right path because of our own desperately sick or deceitful heart, He wants us to recognize when we got off path. And then this wonderfully simple. He wants us to get back on. And that's it. And we're back on like the prodigal son, and he's happy, and everything's great. I think sometimes we overcomplicate it in our head because, as we'll have later on, his ways aren't our ways, and our thoughts aren't his thoughts, or vice versa there. And we tend to think as humans think, and humans generally don't let people off the hook that easy. God's ways aren't our ways. He just wants you back on the straight and narrow. So what modern people do is we tend to follow Satan's lead, and we're going to mention some modern examples throughout this lesson as we look back at old examples also. Well, that is clearly the tendency, and it has always been the tendency. There's nothing really profoundly new. I can't change what happened in your past, my past, or the long ago past, but I do know that what we can do is change how we're going to live from today going forward. And if that intention is there, and every day your intention is to live a little better today than you did yesterday, I'm really good with baby steps, because the wonderful thing about baby steps is when you take enough of them, you find you have made a whole lot of progress. And basically that's what we're after, is continual progress on the upward path. So we're going to start with what I think would be the obvious. Adam and Eve, they trusted in their own heart. I realized Jeremiah 17:9 had not been written yet, but they trusted in their own heart. They were deceived by their own heart. They didn't realize that they weren't as smart as they thought they were. But God's rule was simple enough, wasn't it? How simple could it be? You get every tree in the garden but that one. And you know how it is, because when there's one forbidden, that's the one you want. It doesn't matter how great, how wonderful, how marvelous all the other trees are, how big the rest of the garden is, no matter where you're at, there's that little spot in your mind going, yeah, but there's that one I can't have. And there's something in the pride of humanity, the deceitfulness of our heart, or however you want to work all of that out, that keeps going back to that one. They had one job, as the comedian would say, just one job. All they had to do was not eat of that tree. And they blew it, didn't they? Their choice was our disaster. Now, it was their disaster also. But the thing about sin is when we trust in the deceitfulness of our own heart, yes, we do suffer. But normally, it's not we who suffer alone. The individual that commits a sin has some consequences they're going to have to bear, but then there are other people that also have to deal with the consequences of that sin. There are other people who hurt and agonize over what's going on in someone else's lives, because we are quite interwoven. We might like to think we're independent, nobody cares and nobody thinks about us or something like that, but the fact of the matter is, you're part of a church family, you're part of a biological family that's fairly healthy, you're connected. You're tied in with one another. And when one suffers, everybody pays a little bit of the price. And Adam and Eve, of course, just had no way of thinking that through, or just failed to think it through. So they're definitely the first but they're not the last. No, we won't be the last either, will we? Because the next generation, you know what the next generation's going to do? Same thing our generation did. Now they'll do it with AI and a little more technology than what we've used, but they're going to do the same thing we did. And you know what the next generation's going to do? When they're living on Mars and they have that space colony up there, they're going to do the same thing we did on Earth. That's just the way it works, because a human is a human is a human. Doesn't matter if they're a human in the Garden of Eden or they're human in a spaceship leaving the Milky Way. They're still human. And you know what humans do? They do what they do. Now, that's a little simple way to say it, but we'll leave it there. So in Judges 21:25, that's when he said there was no king in Israel and everybody just did what was right in their own heart. Isn't that America? America has really got to a place where we really wanted to get rid of the old restraints of morality and the stuffiness of old morality, and this really started happening, in my perspective, big time in the 60s. Now, you can trace it back further. I'm really speaking more from my experience and actual history. But people started getting tired of walking the straight and narrow. They wanted to get on the broad road, but they wanted to get on the broad road and still get credit as though they were traveling the narrow road. And so they just started being their own king. That's what America's been doing for a long, long time. And I would simply say, let's look at how that's worked out. We won't delve into that deeper. I think most of you get it. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 tells us not to lean on our own understanding, but trust in the Lord our God with all our heart. That's the goal. If my heart is desperately wicked, if it's deceitful, if it can't be trusted, then I need something I can trust. What is that something I can trust? That's God. So, 4 quick takeaways, then we'll go on to the next point. I want you to anchor your day in Scripture every day, because that was Psalm 119, 105. His Word's going to be a lamp and a light unto our feet. It can't be a lamp and a light unto your feet if you're not reading the Word. You know, if you haven't hid it in your heart, I'm sorry, you can't just have it laying on the coffee table and think it'll work. Look at your compass all the time, that being your Bible. Be sure you're really on track. Check your heart. You're supposed to love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might, with all your being. Be sure you're there. And when you start to drift off, don't beat yourself up too much, okay? Just go, no, that's not the way. Let's get back on track. Because we're going to drift. We're going to go off. The trick is not, never ever will I go off course a little bit. The trick is, how quick can I recognize I'm off course and get back on? That's really more practical. And then listen to godly counsel. You want some people around you that are going to give you godly advice. Adam and Eve did not have godly counsel in the serpent. They had ungodly counsel. Plenty of ungodly counsel out there. And you'll find an expert that will teach you and prove and verify anything you want to do. There was a book written back in the 1970s. Don't remember the author's name, but the title of the book was Looking Out for Number One. It was on the library discard shelf. I got it for 10 cents, thought this is worth a read. And what he said is you can find an expert to prove anything you want to prove. And for years and years, there were experts wearing medical coats saying, my favorite cigarette is Marlboro. And they had experts that proved that tobacco was safe. That finally crumbled, of course. But you can find an expert that'll tell you anything you want. Johnny Carson had one on that had expert advice and said everybody ought to be married and divorced at least 6 times in life to really have a full experience. You can find somebody to validate anything you want validated. That don't make it smart. Don't. Be careful there. You want godly counsel. You want to go back to the book, learn the book, learn it very much. So, the Tower of Babel. Now we have a lot of pride coming in. They said, let us make a name for ourselves. And you can go to Genesis 11, start at verse 1, read the whole story there. They thought their way was better. They thought they knew how to build a tower to heaven to God without God and have their own religion. They had it all figured out in their mind. Their pride went before their destruction. Their haughty spirit went before their stumble. And they fell. And they fell pretty hard. We did a whole lesson on that 2 or 3 weeks ago, so we'll not comment much more. But pride also whispers into our lives sometimes and says, you can do this on your own. We're not talking about major tower building. We're really talking about, kind of put it in a little T and in quotation marks. What's the tower you're trying to build in your life? That's where you want to look. Because if it's a tower that you're trying to build separate and apart from God, you're just like the people who built the Tower of Babel. But if it's a tower we're trying to build under God's instruction, now it's a whole different matter. So watch out when pride starts whispering in there and saying, you can do this and you can do that and you've got this. You don't need God. Don't worry about the people down at church. Don't worry about the Bible. You're smart. You understand what you're doing. That's not a wise way to go. A modern example would be the Titanic. Been a while since we had the movie, right? Branson still has the display, though, which is quite interesting. If you're in Branson and you're a little interested in the Titanic, I would say take that little walk-through thing that they do. And when they come to the block of ice where you put your hand on the ice to see how long you leave your hand on the ice because it demonstrates how cold the water was, yeah, text me how long you made. I think I made about 3 seconds. That's some cold stuff right there. But anyway, so what we had was the Titanic. They called it the unsinkable ship, right? Remember that? And it is rumored, and I don't know if this is verified, but it's rumored that some of the workers were so arrogant that they said not even God himself could sink this ship. A lot of pride. That was a whole other kind of tower, wasn't it? But they built their own little tower. And then what did God show them? Y'all aren't as smart as you think you are. And a whole lot of people learned that lesson the hard way, and it has reverberated down for many, many years now. What's that, 1914, somewhere in there? It was early 1900s, so it's been over 100 years. We don't want to put ourselves in that predicament, whatever our symbolic tower is. So our 4 quick takeaways: always keep God at the head of everything. This is the major mistake people make as they start getting off track there a little bit. Be thankful for every single blessing you have. Just learn to practice gratitude in the smallest, most minute ways. And I don't mean to make it sound so unimportant, but it does need to weave through everything. How did you get here today? Did you walk? Did you thank God for your car? What are you wearing? Rags? Or are you pretty comfortable? Thank God for your clothes. I want just what I'm trying to say is build gratitude into everything you do. That whiff of coffee in the morning. I know those of us who like coffee like that whiff of coffee in the morning. Well, I didn't grow them coffee beans on my own, and I know Juan Valdez down in whatever part of Central America he's in didn't create those coffee beans on his own. Somebody higher made all of that joy possible. Everything, whether it's trivial or it's major, learn to be thankful to God for everything, and that's going to keep you on focus. And now, one other thing on thankfulness: if I wait for just the great big moments, let's say grandbabies, which is a great thing to be thankful for, well, I only have about 3 opportunities there to really, really be thankful. Now, I should be really, really thankful in those. And then let's see, I could add, I got a good wife. And so now there's 4 opportunities. Well, I'm 67 years old. I need to be grateful for more than 4 things in my life. And then how often you get a new car? Well, let's just say every 3 years. So, okay, now I'm up to 5, but that one repeats now and then, but still, that's not a lot. You need just a lack of gratitude in everything. And if you're really grateful for it, I don't think you're going to be too trivial about it if there's true gratitude. So, hold yourself accountable. Be careful. Am I getting off? And if you hold yourself accountable, that's the best accountability there is. Because, human nature is when somebody else holds us accountable, unless we're already in a really strong agreement that they get to be my coach, my trainer, my instructor, our general impulse is to push back and go, who are you? I've known you since the 6th grade. Don't you even begin trying to tell me what to do, because a prophet's not without honor except where? Hometown. And people have known him. And that's okay. We know people, we know everything, and you got to learn to separate that kind of stuff. So deliberately practice your humility, learn to serve others, Keep your eye on God. Then we had Israel rejecting God because they wanted a king. Now, in 1 Samuel 8, verse 4 through 22, it's a lot of stuff to read there, but Samuel's getting old. Apparently his sons just quite aren't the judge and the kind of character he was. And the people go, we want a king. We want to be like the nations around us, which at first glance sounded good initially, but what they did prove was Jeremiah 10:23. That's another verse we use all the time. It is not in man who walks to direct his own steps. Israel thought they could direct their own steps. They thought they had this one figured out. And all they did was prove over and over and over, all the way from the day of Samuel to the destruction of Jerusalem, they couldn't do it. They could not do it. Now, they did have a couple of bright spots, but in those bright spots, you had a couple of kings that did what? Said, we will follow God. And they held people to the rule of the word, and they followed God. And when that king died, what happened? The next king said, we're tired of that. Went back to the old ways, and everything got pretty ugly all over again. We had our own version of this in what I call the moral revolution. Again, we're coming out of, in my perspective, kind of the 60s. I can see how that'd go back to World War II. But it was just like there was that old morality, and it's just so constraining, and it's so old-fashioned, and it's just no good. And we want a new morality, and we got a new morality, and we started celebrating divorce and sex and drugs and freedom and entertainment, recreation, and look what we've got. We have a divorce rate in America that is still hovering right around 50% of marriages end in divorce. We're pretty smart people, aren't we? We've got this one all figured out. Broken families all over the place. We just now call them blended families. We just roll with it. What do you do? It's a sad thing, but it started way back in maybe the 80s. What we called them latchkey kids back then. Do you remember that one going way back? And drugs, of course, we want everybody to be happy. Well, poor old so-and-so over here, he doesn't like beer and he really doesn't like liquor. Let's give him weed. Well, he doesn't like beer, he doesn't like liquor, he doesn't like weed. Maybe we need to give him some mushrooms. It's going there. In one state, it's already gone there. Let's give them psychedelics. And then people think, oh, man, we got it. And now there's more loneliness and emotional and mental issues in America at this time. When you look at the statistics of how many people suffer what we just call emotional and mental issues, it's crazy. It's not, I'm not talking about like, okay, my mate just died and I'm in a grieving period that may last a couple of years. That's normal and happy. You're going to go through that passage. That's a normal happening. But I'm talking about people who year after year after year after year, decade and decade, never found how to be happy in life. Always felt less than, kicked to the curb, and never knew the happiness we talk about in Philippians 4, 6, and 7. Welcome to the moral revolution. Go have sex with who you want to have sex with. Your life will be better. No, it won't. All that's going to do is make you dislike yourself more and more, and that's where the internal misery comes from. Don't go down those roads. There's a right road that seems way, a way that seems right to a person, but it ends the way of death. And that's what Israel figured out the hard way when they go, no, God, we got this. Give us a king and we'll have it made. Isaiah 55, 8 and 9, his ways aren't our ways. His thoughts aren't our thoughts. He's way better. And if you don't have a way better life, you'll learn to tune in. So, quick practical takeaway, submit to God in everything. That's been the repetitive thing for number one so far. Pray for wisdom. James 1:5, he says, if you lack wisdom, pray for wisdom. So if you start feeling like, I'm not sure about God's way there, then pray for wisdom. Ask to understand the way through. There's always a path forward that's better than jumping off with the world. Just pray for wisdom. Sit with it for a while. We're impatient, Well, I prayed for wisdom, waited 15 minutes. God didn't give me anything, so I just had to take matters into my own hands. No, it doesn't work that way. Evaluate your true level of trust in God. That's going to be a very private thing within your own heart. How much do you really, 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 really trust God? And then practice humility under God's leadership. Then you won't be like Israel, wanting to reject God's leadership. Then we have King Saul and his partial obedience. He was supposed to destroy the Amalekites. We know the story. He did not do it, brought back the best of the spoils. And so Samuel gets on to him pretty stern and asks, has the Lord as much delight in burnt offering and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to pay attention is better than the fat of rams. And that's what we want. We want to be right in there. We don't want to be cherry picking things out and going, well, I like this one, I like that one. That's exactly what King Saul did. He went in, he looked at the spoils. Now God was clear, kill everything. If it breathes, kill it. And he started cherry picking. What does modern man do? We cherry pick everything. We cherry pick everything to death. There is no cherry picking left, so to speak. Everybody, everything is its own special issue. So much so that it's really not effective anymore, is it? There's really, everybody's got an issue. Everybody's got a label. Okay. And it just doesn't have any weight to it anymore. So we're going to go after him. If anyone wants to come after me, you're going to deny yourself, take up your cross daily, and follow him. That's the way to go. Not partial, 100%, the absolute best you can do. So we're going to commit to absolute full obedience. Even if we have to go to Matthew 10:28, which I don't think we're under threat of that right now, but that's where he says, don't fear those who can kill the body, but after that have no more they can do. Fear him who after he kills the body can destroy the soul in hell. We want absolute, complete, take up my cross, following Jesus, be thou faithful unto death kind of thing. Recognize and reject any rationalization that comes in your mind, because that's all Saul did. He's like, man, surely God didn't mean these really good livestock. This was some good livestock over here. Surely God wouldn't want us to kill that. That'd be a good sacrifice. No, God had been really clear. But he rationalized it. We can rationalize anything. It's really pretty amazing. We can rationalize anything. And so be aware of that. Again, seek accountability. That'd be a value of really being part of a church family. And stay grounded in the Word. I know there's some repetition here, but that's all right. How do you learn? Repetition, repetition, or repetition. That's the way we get it in there. Then we have Judas and his greed. He trusted in his own heart. My heart's not wicked. My heart's not deceitful, right? You can start reading the beginning of it in Matthew 26:14, where he said, what would you give me to betray him? He didn't think ahead. He saw some money. That was his thing. Money was his go-to. He saw some money. It turned out to be 30 pieces of silver. You can make a lot of interesting lessons out of that. But he didn't think about the grief that was to come that would lay beyond that. So Paul would later write, the love among you is the root of all sorts of evil, and some, by a longing for it, have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves through with many griefs. Doesn't that describe Judas, who finally in his desperation gave the money back and went out and hung himself? Do you think he ever thought of that ahead of time? I'm going to go betray Christ, I'm going to get this money, and then I'm going to get really depressed, I'm going to give the money back, and I'm going to go kill myself. This sounds like a good plan. He thought he'd be, as we would say in our culture, Friday night rich for a little while. Have all the money he wanted to do whatever he wanted to do. He didn't think it through. Solomon would say, the sleep of a poor man is sweet. Sweet of a rich man is not sweet. You got too many griefs to worry about, too many things to cover. So, modern example, we have the 2008 financial crisis. That's getting far enough back. People go, the what? When the bubble popped and all that stuff happened in tech especially. Then we had Enron, if you want to go way, way back there into the 1990s. The whole thing crumbled and people lost everything. We have things on a smaller scale like Bernie Madoff, who had his Ponzi scheme. And then we just have, all kinds of things. The economy is always going through cycles, and people who are experts in this always point out it is cyclical. It is cyclical. There's always going to be an up. There's always going to be a down. We're in winter right now. What's going to follow winter? Spring, right? And then we're going to have summer. And then we're going to go into fall, and then what's going to happen? We're going to go back into winter, right? This is just the way it works. Well, in the financial field, it works the same way. Now, not with this precise timing as the seasons, but you can guarantee that after you have a very prosperous time, that's going to play out. You got your bull market, they call it, and it's going to play out. And it's going to become what they call a bear market. Now, the question is, how bear will bear get? Will we be the depression, or will we be worse? We don't know. But we know, as he would say later on, I've got another verse coming up here, that the benefits of money aren't going to outlast the tombstone. They're going to make wings and fly away. And so be careful when you get money. Don't be greedy of anything. Guard against every form of greed. And I don't care what form. Money's the real obvious one to talk about. But you can be greedy for other things. It doesn't have to be money. Be really, really careful. Because greed's going to get you in trouble. Practice contentment. Paul would say over in 1 Corinthians 6, verse 6, 1 Timothy 6, verse 6 and 7, if we have food and clothing, with these we shall be content. Learn to practice contentment. We in America are so far above the basic standard Paul wrote, we should never, ever be discontent, but we're human. We do it sometimes. Pursue generosity in some way or another. And I don't mean go throw your cash away. Now, there may be occasions where you want to put your cash in somebody or some cause. That's fine. Really one of the things that are needed more than anything is a little attention, a little real communication. One of the things that comes up repetitively on the various people I listen to is that very few people actually feel like they are heard by anyone nowadays. You want to be generous, you don't have money, pick up your phone and call somebody. Practice the art of listening and really see if you can connect with them. Take them out for a cup of coffee if you have a little more time and a little more money. Now, I'm not saying Starbucks because they want $5 a cup of coffee at Starbucks. If I'm spending that kind of money, I'm going to 7 Brew. 7 Brew gives you this great big 7-Eleven Slurpee size cup of coffee for a large. I'll pay $5 for that. It's nothing but a sugar rush. Anchor yourself in security in God. That's where you want to be. Don't do it in money. That's where Judas messed up. The rich fool, going to build bigger barns. Got some barns, got to build bigger barns. God said, nope, you're not going to do it. Your soul is demanded of you. And then what's going to happen to everything you own? Think about that for a second. What is going to happen to everything you own? Most of the great wealthy families, when the patriarch or matriarch dies, and then the will starts spreading it out, because that's what wills do, most of them don't last through that second generation, or even less make it through the third generation. Because once the head is gone, then the kids, when they get the money, I hope they don't actually say this, but it's almost like we've been waiting for him to die for the last 10 years so we get all that money and do what we want to do. And since they didn't sweat and bust their back for it, usually they pilfer through it so quick like a lottery winner, and 3 years later they're broke. Watch out. Misplaced priorities and the wrong treasures get people in trouble. Happened in the Great Depression. You had people one day, man, they were wealthy. The next day they were poor. And supposedly people were jumping out of windows committing suicide. So if you set your eyes on it, it's gone. For your wealth's going to make itself wings like eagle and fly toward the heavens. It's going to be gone. You never know when or how that's going to happen. It doesn't have to be a Great Depression. Other things can be the cause of it too. And some of it is just time and chance. So, 4 quick takeaways. Prioritize investing in heaven. That's where it's all at. Learn to see the limits of money. Don't want you to give up your money, but understand, money's just a tool. It's a nice tool, but there's only so much it can do. Pick the deeper values of life. I don't care if you have $10 million in the bank. Nothing can take the place, no financial thing can take the place of being able to sit down with someone whose company you enjoy, whether friend, family, mate, and spend 2 hours together Being in the presence of someone you love to be in their presence and they love to be in yours. Nothing. You can't buy that. You can buy a fake that, but when the money's gone, your fake friends are gone. Be careful. Pick the deeper values and focus on that spiritual growth. And then finally, we have Solomon, who misused God's blessing. In 1 Kings 11, 1 through 13, this is where he tells us how he messed up. He loved women. He loved lots of women. He had 700 wives, 300 concubines. He was a little messed up, if you ask me. A lot of it was a power play, but nonetheless, he abused his power. He married a lot of foreign women. Then the foreign women said, honey, we miss our God back home. Can't you just build us a little temple for? And you'd think Solomon would have more backbone. They nagged, pestered, cajoled, whatever they did, and Solomon followed them right off into their pagan practices. Now, had he stood with the word like he was supposed to, Deuteronomy 17:17, we always knew a king was coming. That's just back in the time of Moses. And when he's saying, when you set up a king, he shall not multiply wives for himself, or else his heart will turn away, nor shall he greatly increase silver and gold for himself. What did Solomon do? Multiplied some wives big time. And who was the richest king of all Israel's history? What happened? It was bad. So our modern tech is our blessing that can be abused. I am pro-modern tech. I want to keep it short and simple. Modern technology is no different than that gun you got in your boot, your pocket, or your purse, and I'm not against those either. I kind of like the idea of knowing we got guns in the auditorium. I'm just going to lay flat as a pancake if anything ever goes wrong, because I don't know who's shooting from where. But anyway, I got to tell the story. Remember when Orland carried a gun? Orland? Yeah, I'm hitting the carpet. I'm disappearing. So I think that's all modern tech is. Modern tech's like the guns you go and deer hunt with. That gun is not good or bad. It's not evil. It's not good. It is a tool. Modern tech, AI, and what they call general intelligence is coming on. I think it's just going to be who uses it. Good people use it, good things are going to happen. Bad people use it, bad things are going to happen. And both of them are going to happen. Same thing with guns. Same thing with drugs. And same thing for AI or general artificial intelligence or agents or whatever you want to call all of that stuff. It's going to go both ways. So be grateful for every blessing you have. And again, I'd like to repeat it, but I won't I'm talking to my new. You're putting your favorite socks on and you're going, boy, these are comfortable socks. Be grateful for them. Now, I know you go, yeah, that's a little trivial. No, it isn't. Down at the unit, one of the things they give away once a year is socks. I didn't realize how important socks were until I saw how excited the inmates got over getting a free pair of socks. And I still see it. I've seen it year after year. And this year it was the same thing. They were delighted. Why? Because socks are hard to come by when you're in prison. You can be grateful for socks. And if you don't think you can, then try going barefooted like we did in the 60s all the time. I could do it if I was Reese's age. I couldn't do it now, right? Use all the blessings to God's glory. That's where you want to keep aiming at. This is God's glory. Avoid those divisive influences. Stay focused on God. Somebody's trying to pull you away. You don't have to be rude, but you don't have to stay. You can go, this isn't where I want to be. I think I'll go home and take a nap, or I'll go cut grass, or I'll go do something. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. So, what did we learn? Adam and Eve trusted their own heart. It went bad. Builders of Babel trusted their own heart. It went bad. Israel rejected God as king. It went bad. Saul trusted his own heart. It went bad. Judas trusted his own heart, got greedy. It went bad. The rich fool trusted his own heart. It went bad. Solomon trusted his own heart. It went bad. I think you get the rhythm of that there. Don't trust in your own heart. So that leaves us with one question. What are you really, really trusting in? As we're getting ready to sing, all things are ready. And they are. If you're not on the straight and narrow and you need some help, let us do whatever we can while together. Stand and sing.